Hey there, it's Lara here with your weekly astrology forecast. Thanks for being here. Today is technically actually June 30th as I'm recording this. I'm recording it a day early because I won't be around tomorrow. It's Canada Day here, so happy Canada Day, to my fellow Canucks. So this forecast is for the week of July 1st to 7th, 2020. And it's a big one. Again, I know, we keep saying this, but we have another eclipse, the third and final eclipse for this eclipse season, and the final eclipse in Capricorn. So this story on the Cancer-Capricorn axis has been playing out for us since July 2018, and it is now coming to a close. And so that's a big deal, right? I'm going to talk about what that means for us and, collectively and, of course, individually as we go through the video here. But before I do that, I want to let you know that the moon is currently in Scorpio as I'm recording this, right? So that's intensity. Scorpio, moon in Scorpio, if you were blessed with a moon in Scorpio when you were born, which I was, you will know firsthand the level of emotional intensity that you experience. It is like no other sign experiences emotions when you have the moon in Scorpio. It is... I heard Stephen Forrest describe it as, it's like a cyclone of emotions. And I thought, accurate, accurate. And so my point is here, when the moon is in Scorpio, it can feel a bit intense if you're not used to the energy in particular, right? But it is very good energy for doing things like investigating, probing, getting to the bottom of things, focusing on, the sort of shadows or the darker side of things and working through that. It can also be about dealing with issues around power and, power dynamics, even issues around, big transformation. Scorpio is the sign related to transformation. So those are some things. You can find out more about the moon and working with the moon and what the moon in Scorpio is good for if you download my free guide to working with the moon over on my website. So the link is below for that. But the moon will move into Sagittarius on Thursday, which tends to be a bit more of an expansive, optimistic energy. And then it moves into Capricorn on Friday, when we are going to have, depending where you live, over July 4th and 5th, you will experience that eclipse in Capricorn. And then on Monday, it will move into the more sort of future-oriented sign of Aquarius. And before we have the eclipse this week, there's another big event happening. And that is, well, first of all, on Monday this week, right, we had that Jupiter, the second of three Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions in Capricorn. And you can listen to last week's video about that, because that is a long-term, I think it was last week's video, or maybe last week's video, I talked about Mars, but it's last week or the week before. But that is a long-term influence for 2020. So that might be something you're interested in knowing more about if you haven't heard about it yet. And then, but the big thing that's happening here on July 1st is that Saturn is retrograding back into Capricorn. So, and it's going to remain there until December 16th. So pretty much for the rest of the year, right? So Saturn was traveling through Capricorn with all that other planetary energy, Pluto and Jupiter, Pallas Athena is there as well. And we've been watching this story in Capricorn play out and experiencing it firsthand, right, for the last couple of years. And now Saturn went into Aquarius for a little bit to kind of scout out the future, right? Aquarius, the sign of the future, to scout out what's ahead, to get a glimpse of that and to kind of see, okay, what do we need? How should we prepare ourselves for what's to come? What do we need to, what resources do we still need to gather? How do we need to shore things up? What tasks and lessons and these kinds of things do we have to finish up before we can move forward, right? And so Saturn went, forward into Aquarius and got some intel, and now is circling back to Capricorn, the sign that it rules. So it packs an extra punch in Capricorn. And it's going back there to say, okay, this is the final countdown. It's the time now where you got to sort this shit out. You have to do whatever work is remaining. And if you haven't done any of the work that I've been trying to poke and prod and, tell you to do, I've been trying to coax you to do, then you might not be too happy with yourself around now, and you might have extra work. It'll be like a big cram for the final exam kind of thing. But you can do it. You can do it, right? We've all been there. So, and I'll talk more about this when I talk about the eclipse. So let's get into the eclipse. I'm going to show you the chart right now, and then we'll start talking about the eclipse more. So here is the chart for the eclipse on July 4th or 5th, depending on where you live. Where I am, which is Eastern time, it's July 5th at about 12:44 a.m. So very, early in the morning on July 5th. So here we have all this energy in Capricorn, including Saturn that's retrograded back in there. And there's Pluto, there's Jupiter, there's asteroid Pallas. And there, of course, is the moon, because the moon is always involved in eclipses. This is a full moon, lunar eclipse, right? So the moon will be full in the sign of Capricorn, very close to the south node, in this case, in Sagittarius. Eclipses happen when the moon is in proximity to the nodes. So there we've got moon in Capricorn right across the sky, the sun in the opposite sign of Cancer at 13 degrees, right? A full moon is always in opposition. And then an eclipse is when the new or the full moon is close to the nodes. So that's what's going on here, right? North node in Gemini now. It's been in Cancer. The nodes have been in Cancer and Capricorn for the last close to 2 years. They have recently shifted into Gemini and Sagittarius, and I've spoken about that in a previous video. So you can have a look at that if you want. We also have Mercury retrograde right now in Cancer, right? Close to the sun, within 6 or 7 degrees there. Not an exact conjunction, but close enough. And we have asteroid Vesta, which is in perfect exact conjunction with the sun and opposite the moon. And then we also have another asteroid over here, Ceres, which is in an almost exact configuration. Ceres is in Pisces. So Ceres is trining the sun and Vesta, which is a positive aspect, right? An easy flowing aspect. And then sextiling the moon up here. So, and then we have one other thing I want to point out to you is we've got Uranus, which is also in this conversation of a sextile within a few degrees of the sun and Vesta and Mercury. Okay, and I spoke about Mars moving into Aries. So we'll talk more about that because that's a big deal, and it's been in, that's affecting us for the rest of the year. I did a video on that. I believe it was last week, but we'll talk more about that as it gets closer to retrograding. All right, so that's what I want to show you as far as where things are at in the chart. Sorry, I had my face covered up there for a bit, but I wanted to show you those pieces because that's what I'm going to talk about. Excuse me. It's a warm week here, which is nice, but tough when you don't have central air. So, okay. The eclipse is happening at 13 degrees Capricorn, which is cardinal Earth energy, right? And the cardinal signs have been feeling these eclipses potently because they're happening. The eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn I'm referring to, because those signs are on the cardinal axis. So the other two cardinal signs are Aries and Libra, right? So those 4 cardinal signs have been being hit by these eclipses over the last couple of years. So big changes going on there for those signs in particular, or anybody who has a lot of energy. Even if it's not your sun, moon, or rising in one of the 4 cardinal signs, if you have a cluster of planets there, you can still be feeling this, right? So, like I said, this series of eclipses began in July 2018. And this particular eclipse, 13 degrees Capricorn, you can look back to other lunar eclipses at that degree, right? So there was one July 7th, 2019, July 5th, sorry, not 2019, that was wrong. July 7th, 2009, July 5th, 2002, and previous to that, July 6th, 1982. So that may give you a bit of information about similar themes that may be playing out for you. But in any case, as I was mentioning, this is a lunar eclipse. It's not a super powerful one in terms of how close the node, the nodes are, or the node is to the moon, but it is the final one. And so in that regard, it is powerful because it is this closing, the book, or, the book stays open for tends to be about kind of 6 months after the eclipse happens, right? Because that energy ripples out. But we are kind of finalizing the final chapter, let's put it that way, with this eclipse on this Cancer Capricorn story. And because it's a full moon, like all full moons, this is about some kind of culmination, right? We're reaching a turning point. There may be some catharsis that happens, or a crisis of sorts, or a sort of blooming, right? That happens in this area, in the Capricorn area of our chart, related to Capricorn themes and the themes that are associated with whatever house Capricorn fits in for us. And I'll get to that. At full moons, there can be, we know that full moons can be quite emotional, because our emotions that may be sort of buried down there tend to rise to the surface. Just as the moon pulls on the tides, she pulls on our emotions, right? And so there can be some important emotional release that goes on around now, or an illumination of sorts, right? Seeing something that has been previously obscured is often full moon energy. So all of these themes can be happening. And this is happening on this axis of Cancer Capricorn, right? The sun is in in Cancer right now, and the moon at the time of the eclipse in Capricorn. And this is the axis of practical security, Capricorn, and emotional security, Cancer. It's the axis of public life, Capricorn, and private life, Cancer. It's the axis of parenting, I sometimes, refer to it. So that energy of like the divine masculine, Capricorn, versus the divine feminine, right? Cancer. You could literally think of it as mother, father as well. So it's important at any kind of full moon, because a full moon is an opposition of the sun and the moon, to look to strike some kind of balance between these energies, right? So that's what we're looking for. But beyond that, this eclipse in Capricorn is where this huge story has been playing out. Not only in relation to eclipses happening there, but because, like I said, we've had Saturn and Pluto. We had that big conjunction at the beginning of the year. Then Jupiter joined that party. And, Jupiter and Pluto are meeting up 3 times in Capricorn this year. And so big, huge energy. And I've been talking about this. Every astrologer has been talking about it, unless they've been living under a rock. But it is like this massive restructuring and transformation and upheaval that's going on in relation to Capricorn. So on a global scale, we're seeing that very, very evidently in the world. Huge changes to infrastructures, to organizations of power, power structures, hierarchies, big business, banks, governments, institutions, authority, people that we think of as authorities. Our sense of practical material security is being challenged and being broken down. So we've been talking about this. This is no surprise, right? If you've been paying attention to the astrology, the specific details of how it's playing out, are often a surprise. But the archetypes involved, or the energies at play, or the impacts on certain themes, personally and globally, are not a surprise, right? If you've been paying attention to the astrology. And so you can think, just based on what I just said, there are a million examples that could come to mind right now. Of course, the pandemic is having a huge impact on that. Issues around the police and racial tension. Oh my goodness, the list goes on and on. The economy, very Capricorn, is being challenged in a big way. And we're realizing in general that a lot of those structures and institutions, education, may have been built on a shoddy foundation to begin with, right? Not a strong foundation. The foundation of these power structures and institutions and hierarchies and that sort of thing was not solid, because it could not withstand the stress that this year has brought about. And so, right, Pluto is there to say, burn it down, essentially. Whatever's not working, you cannot build on a shoddy foundation. So you need to tear it down and start again. And, Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, he doesn't really... I don't want to say he doesn't care, but it's not really in his nature to be concerned about how difficult this is going to be for us, right? It's not really in Saturn's nature either. Saturn requires us to do the work. It requires us to adult, to step up, to be mature, to be, responsible, and to take care of things, to really overcome the obstacles, doesn't want us to take shortcuts, all of this kind of thing, right? So that's what's been going on for us globally, but then it's also been going on for us personally in at least one area, right, of our lives. And that is wherever Capricorn sits, often in relation to, the opposing sign as well, which is Cancer, wherever Cancer sits. But it's really, the focus is really on Capricorn, and we are in we're at this place right now, right, with this eclipse, where we really are being called to to clean up any mess that's left over here, to take responsibility where we may not have been taking responsibility for things. It's like we're reaping what we sowed right now. We may like that, we may not. We may realize, wow, we kind of had our head in the sand and we were ignoring certain things because they were too difficult and maybe too painful. Saturn, Pluto, to deal with. And now we have to, because if we don't pass this final exam, then we move forward carrying all this crap and all this baggage with us, right? Which is not how we want to go into the future. So if we can circle back to this area of life and say, okay, here's where I can take responsibility where maybe I haven't yet. Here are the final things that I need to do and work on so that I can let some things go, so that I can leave this, shit show behind in some way, shape, or form, and move on, right? Unencumbered, or at least less encumbered moving forward. So there can be a big catharsis that happens around now, and in the coming months. But it's unlikely to be something that you aren't aware of already, because the story has been playing out for a long time. So you may have chosen, some of us may have chosen to sort of, bury our heads in the sand or ignore it or look the other way or pretend it wasn't happening. But on some level, you know what this is about. So this is again, it's showing us where there may be still some chinks in the armor, right? Some cracks in the foundations of our lives, of systems, of institutions, of power structures, those kinds of things that we need to deal with once and for all. So whatever's coming up for you right now, pay attention. Pay attention. This is where you need to put your focus, right? So, and then we're moving into like the nodes of the moon, as I mentioned, and there's another video on this on my channel. But they're moving into these mutable signs of Gemini and Sagittarius, which is where the eclipses will be happening for the next 18 months to 2 years, right? We've already had one of each, but we got the very first hints of what that's about. But this is really, in a nutshell, about us being adaptable, right? We need to adopt a nature of adaptability moving forward in order to best navigate what's going on right now and into the future. And because this Capricorn eclipse is close to the south node of the moon, this is a letting go, a release of, a final sort of, like I said, catharsis of what's no longer serving us, of what's no longer working, of we've learned these lessons ad nauseum, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. So let's just put it to bed, right? But we may have some work that we still need to do before we can put it to bed over the remainder of 2020. So just a couple things I wanted to mention in relation to what, specific aspects are going on. The sun, as I showed you, is conjunct Vesta, asteroid Vesta. And Vesta is that divine feminine energy that, Vesta was goddess of the hearth, to put it really simply. And it's about that inner flame, right? It is about our inner spark. It's about what we are truly devoted to. And it's in Cancer and it's conjunct the sun, right? So this may involve our practices around emotional security, around keeping our family, or people that feel like family, our tribe, things involving our roots, our homes, anything that impacts our emotional security, really keeping that, really being devoted to that, and doing whatever it takes, right? And being sovereign in our efforts towards that as well. It is very much Vesta. So Vesta is also Vesta and the Sun, right, are because they're exactly conjunct each other, both at 13 degrees Capricorn, are also in a trine to asteroid Ceres. So another divine feminine energy. Ceres was the goddess of agriculture, of she's like the Earth Mother, and she is connected to the all things nurturing, including issues around children and the vulnerable, right? And so how are we going to take care of these things, right? Over this time, over our vulnerable sort of resources, and which includes our earth and our children and the more vulnerable among us. How are we going to do this? So there's a trine there, and then the moon is in a sextile, right, with Ceres. And so those trines and sextiles, they are more positive energies. They're more easy flowing energies. They're more opportunistic energies, but we have to work with them consciously, right? We will get a better outcome if we work with them consciously. Let's put it that way. But they are more favorable. So that's good news. We also have the moon trining Uranus, loosely, but it's there, and sextiling the sun, and then Mercury and Uranus sextiling each other as well, which I showed you on the chart. So again, these are positive aspects, right? This is good. There is, Mars is squaring, but it's far, far off. So it's less of a concern at the time of this eclipse. And it's in its home sign of Aries, as we talked about last week. So with Uranus here, we can, this energy that's interplaying with Uranus can bring about, Uranus is the catalyst, right? It can be a sudden break or a sudden insight, a sudden change that propels us forward, that breaks us away from the past and, sort of ejects us towards the future. But ultimately it's for our own good, and it's in a supportive way because these energies are in trine and sextile. So I wanted to make sure that I told you that as well. Because I know a lot of people are, just some of the posts that I've been putting on Facebook and stuff and talking about the intensity of 2020 in general, but the fact that it's not over yet. I'm never going to lie to you. I'm not that person. I'm not going to tell you that everything is always rainbows and unicorns and fairy dust, but I also want you to know that we have what it takes to deal with this, to face it, to work with it, to change it, to get through it, to evolve. We have what it takes, but it requires us to engage with the process, to not leave it up to everybody else to take care of, to not blame everybody else for what's going on, to take responsibility, right? Saturn and Capricorn, to be mature about it, to, feel the difficulties and the pain that may arise in this process, but, to stand tall and understand and know that if we do the right thing, the responsible thing, the mature thing, the thing that is in integrity, then it's going to be okay. So let's go through each of the signs now. I hope that didn't sound too preachy, but, I really, those are all the things that I really, really wanted to get across to you, because I'll say it one more time. This is the final eclipse here. So it's like, I really want all of us to understand, if there's work still to be done, we need to do it. We need to do it because it's going to be in our own best interest moving forward. The good of ourselves, the good of the people we love, the good of all, right? So we're going to go through each of the signs now, and I'll briefly touch on which house this is happening in for you and the themes that speak to that house, so you know where the eclipse is happening. Please definitely listen to the introduction, because this will not make any sense to you unless you do. So this is for, first and foremost, rising sign. Listen for your rising sign first. Whole sign houses are what I'm using for this, for these general forecasts. So if you have your chart, or your chart in a different house system, this may differ slightly, but I can only know that by looking at your personal chart, which of course I'm happy to do, but this is for whole sign. And so, I'll speak to the house it's happening in for a rising sign, and then also listen for your sun and moon sign. And, if you know that you have a cluster of planets or something significant in the last, particularly around, in this specific instance, 13 degrees of the cardinal signs, but anywhere those last 20 degrees of the cardinal signs, like 10 to 30 degrees, then you may want to listen for that too. Like personally, I have a Saturn-Venus conjunction that is being exactly squared by Pluto on and off all year, right? And that Capricorn energy. And this is factoring in big time to my own personal experience. So that can be something important, if you have something like that going on for you as well, you might want to listen. But let's get started. I'll just briefly touch on each of the signs, and we'll start with Capricorn, because this is happening in your first house, Capricorn. So this is a big deal. Capricorn, you have been going through some stuff for the last couple of years, right? And you don't need me to tell you that at this point, I'm sure. So this is, this eclipse is touching on your house of self, of your personal being. So your physical body and health, and vitality. It is how you come across to people, how people perceive you, how you project yourself out into the world. It's sort of this, it's this interplay between you and the world, but it's very much about I, me, mine, the self. And so, it can be about the relationship you have to yourself as well, Capricorn. And so this is ultimately where there has been huge transformation and restructuring going on. And it's not been easy. But this final eclipse in your sign is saying, what do you still have left to take responsibility for? Or what needs to still be, swept? What corners still need to be swept out? What is going on in that first house in relation to those first house themes that you need to take one last hard look at and take care of business. So that's for you, Capricorn. Next, we have Sagittarius, where the eclipse is happening in your second house. And so for you, Sagittarius, this has been some major lessons to learn, some restructuring, some challenges, maybe some, there can be some high points and low points as well, but it's been a bit of a slog in relation to your personal resources. So your finances, your personal finances, right? Money, also time, energy. And second house also relates to our values and what we truly value, our core values, right? What we place value on and what we place worth on, including how we value ourselves. So self-worth. So this is the area that's being illuminated for you at the time of this eclipse. And this is the area that this bigger story has been playing out for you over the last couple of years. And it's like now we're fine-tuning the last chapter. So you want to make sure that you don't ignore whatever's going on in that area right now. So that's for you, Sag. Next, we've got Scorpio. Scorpio, the eclipse is hitting your third house of your immediate environment, of all things communication, of how you communicate, messages exchanged back and forth in a variety of ways. Third house has to do with mobility. It has to do with the people in your immediate environment, like siblings, cousins, neighbors, teammates, peers. this sort of thing, and how you engage or don't with them. It's about learning the basics of things, right? The foundations of things. And so, early learning. And so, and it can be about, things also like marketing and that sort of thing, commerce. So all of these themes are third house. So there is a story that's been playing out for you over the last couple of years, and it is surrounding some of these themes. And now it's like the final push to take care of business in that area, any unfinished business, right? And take responsibility for whatever it is that you may have kind of put on the back burner, or the final pieces that need to be put into place there. So that's you, Scorpio. Next, we've got Libra, where this eclipse is hitting your 4th house. So Libra, for you, the story has been in Capricorn around home, family, roots, place of living. So it can be literally your house or home or wherever you live. Your sense of emotional security is being challenged here. And, there is the eclipse in Capricorn, this final eclipse in Capricorn, is saying what needs to be taken care of here that you may have not taken care of yet. That you really need to focus on over the remainder of 2020, so that you can move forward without dragging this baggage with you, right? And so, and it's around those themes. And it can be also about, 4th house is like the mother figures, nurturing female figures, that sort of thing. So, so that's for you, Libra. Next, we've got Virgo, where the eclipse is happening in your 5th house, Virgo. So this big work, right, of Capricorn has been all about issues around how you have fun in life, what brings you joy, what sparks joy for you, issues around children and anything creative projects, putting yourself out there, shining your light. And when I see children, that can be your children you work with, those sorts of things. But ultimately, this area has been a bit of a slog over the last 2 years, and there's been a lot of adjustments needing to be made, and certain things breaking down and just not really working properly, and you've had to do a lot of work there. There may have been some real joyous moments too, but overall it's been hard work. And so the eclipse there is saying to you, Virgo, what still needs to be taken care of in this department so that you can move forward without carrying so much baggage, right? With feeling lighter and feeling more of a sense of joy, bringing more joy into your experience. And so that's what's going on for you, and that's the area of life that's being impacted, Virgo. And so think about these themes and how they may be impacting you personally and what that means for you, right? Don't ignore it. It's not the time to ignore it. Next, we've got Leo. So Leo, this eclipse is hitting your 6th house, which is a house that has to do with the daily grind. It is the work you do on the day-to-day, paid or unpaid, right? Your routines, including health and wellness routines, and issues around health and wellness and sickness and that sort of thing. It is about how you are in service to those around you, on the day-to-day. And it can be about relationships between unequals as well. And so for you, Leo, whatever's been going on is not new, right? Stuff's been transpiring in this area of life for the last couple of years. It's been a project, to say the least. But it is not time to drop the project now and to say, good enough, let's move on. It is time to laser focus on what still needs to be done in that area, what needs to be let go of, what final challenges need to be overcome so that you can move forward less encumbered by these things. All right, so that's for you, Leo. Next, we've got Cancer. Cancer, this eclipse is happening in your opposite sign, right, of Capricorn. So you've been getting hit by these eclipses and all this energy too. It hasn't been an easy time for you these last couple of years. And this specific, energy, any eclipses that happen in Capricorn have been in your 7th house of your close personal relationships. Anyone you are in close relationship with, including, a marriage partner or a significant other, but any close friends, family members, business partners, this sort of thing. And it also has very much to do with contracts and agreements in the 7th house. So, and what we call sort of open enemies or rivals, right? And so this is the story. This is where the story's been playing out for you. And these last 6 months of 2020, you are being called to step up, to do the adulting, to be mature and do what needs to be done, what still needs to be done in this area, to release things, to smooth things over, to really solidify your close personal relationships, so that moving forward, it's things flow more easily in this department. So that's for you, Cancer. Next, we have Gemini. Gemini, the eclipse is hitting your 8th house. So Gemini, for you, the larger story, over the last couple of years in this Capricorn area of the chart has been about emotional, psychological healing and wounding. It's been about vulnerability. It's been about your intimate relationships. It's been about other people's resources, right? And your ties to those. So debt and taxes, insurance, wills, mortgages, like all of these kinds of things, right? And it's about this, ultimately the 8th house is about this big process, metaphorically speaking, of death and rebirth. And so this transformational process. So this is where the eclipse is happening for you. Anything that is unfinished business in that area, it's really important to take care of that over these next few months, so that you can move forward, into 2021 without carrying all this baggage of these 8th house themes, right? So that's for you, Gemini. Next, we've got Taurus. And Taurus, for you, the eclipse is happening in your 9th house. And so this is about, some larger story at play, some big work that's been happening for you in terms of your worldview, your belief systems, your ideologies, your connection to foreign people and places, and what you might learn from foreign cultures, and ideas that are different from yours. It's about teaching and learning, and it can be literally about things like, higher institutions of higher learning. It can be about religious beliefs and ideologies. Those are all 9th house themes. So some of those may be a factor or will be a factor for you in relation to this eclipse and in relation to the Capricorn story that's playing out. So whatever's been going on for you there, it's really time for you, Taurus, to, take a good hard look, finish crossing the T's and dotting the I's, let go of things that are no longer serving you in this department. Take responsibility where it still needs to, where you still need to do that. All of those things that I spoke about in the introduction in relation to these 9th house themes for you. And in doing that, you'll be able to move forward less bogged down by whatever has been going on for you here. All right, next we've got Aries. Aries, for you, this Capricorn energy and this story and this eclipse is happening in the 10th house, right? This has been playing out in a very public part of the chart for you, the 10th house, which is about your career ambitions, your public persona and reputation, the legacy you wish to leave. It's about your relationship to authority and authority figures. It's about your relationship to your own authority. So all of these things factor in. It's about your material, practical security as well. And so Aries, there's been a huge transformation going on here for you. And it's not over yet, but there's still some final details to work out, right? If you've been neglecting what wants your attention in this department, it may be a lot of work for the next 6 months, but it's worth doing. So pay attention to whatever that is for you specifically and take responsibility where it's needed. Let go of what you need to let go of, and do the detail work so that you can move forward. without hanging on to all this baggage, right? All right, next we've got Pisces. Pisces, this is hitting your 11th house of your hopes and dreams for the future, of the people that are walking the same path as you that can help you get where you want to go, of friendship groups, clubs, associations, you know, the collective, so to speak. And so Pisces, there's been a lot of changes and transformation and hard work going on in this area, and it's not over yet, right? This final eclipse in Capricorn is saying, okay, you need to edit the final chapter now. Do the work that still needs to be done here. Don't ignore it, because if you ignore it, you're going to regret it down the road. Take a good hard look and do the adulting here and do the work that still needs to happen in order for you to move forward, less bogged down, you know, around some of these themes. All right, and last but not least, we've got Aquarius. Aquarius, for you, this Capricorn energy sits in your 12th house. So this is where the eclipse is happening and where the story in Capricorn has been unfolding for the last couple of years for you. And, you know, the 12th house is a very hidden house. And so this can be more of a deep psychological process or a spiritual process, or a process that has to do with your spiritual and mental health that's been going on. It may have been a challenge to release some things, maybe some self-sabotaging behaviors or addictions even. You know, there may have been a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors that has made it very difficult for you. And some challenges even posed by, you know, certain institutions like hospitals or spiritual retreat centers or ashrams or, you know, those kinds of places that are closed off from the world. So that's the big work that you've been doing. And it's time to take care of the final details, Aquarius, so that you can move forward less, you know, bogged down by these things. So that's what I've got for all 12 signs. I hope that made sense to you. If you have questions or comments, please put them below and I will definitely answer. Okay. Take good care and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.